Welcome back to another episode of the Know Your Power podcast. I'm your host, Juliarene.
And Kendall Graboff.
And today, guys, we have the amazing, the incredible Chelsea.
Oh, that's a good sound, dude.
Isn't that? Guys, I'm getting real funky with the board. And it was like so beautiful. It was like a princess because she's so princessy. But welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here.
Yes. I literally came home from my trip. I met Chelsea at FitCon, and she literally lives in Houston, and I'm literally here every other day. So is Kendall. Like, we're always here. And I met her. It took me to have to go to Miami to meet her. And as soon as I met her, I came home and was like, Kendall, Erica, you have to meet Chelsea. Mm-hmm. I told Zach, I was like, I can't. Like, I was like, I made a friend.
I mean, I met you 30 seconds ago, and like your energy is great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I honestly feel like that's the biggest compliment. And I feel like I actually work very hard with, like, before I step into a place, I'm like, reframe. You want to walk in and like actually have the energy that draws it to you.
We talk about doing that a lot.
We always set intentions before we go in to do anything, almost anything. And I know we talked about this in Miami, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but literally setting intentions with every single thing that you do is so important so that you go through life with intention instead of just going in blind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But guys, I wanted to start the podcast by reading one of her Instagram posts. If you don't follow her on social media, please do, because her posts are literally like poetry. The way that she writes is just, it speaks to me, and I want to start off with it. So this is from, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but it says, I kept every empty Smarties box so I could tear off the end tab that had the kids' help phone number written across it. I learned at a very young age the difference between weed and parsley and identifying the white dust poorly cleaned off the coffee table. By the time I was 16, I left home, spent my time learning how to calculate my paycheck to the exact next just so I can afford my bills. I grew up without a heavy parental advice. And then we skip forward and it says, I blame them for everything. In a sick, fucked up sense, I thought me struggling would have forced them to show up and save me. What I didn't realize until I did was that I was in control of everything I had been doing. What I didn't realize until I did, oh wait, I just read that. This is the most important part that like really got me. I had the power to break out of the destruction I was looping through every week. And the reason I love this so much was that so many people use their story and what happened to them as things that always happen to them. And I saw the reframe. I knew the reframe was coming immediately because I know you. And I was like, yes. So she's used her story, which we'll go into, to not be a victim of it. And I love it. So,
which takes a lot. Because there's people dealt far better hands than you that like live in a self-pity world. So it's like so admirable. Like we haven't even gotten into your story, but from that alone, like you can tell it's admirable that like you don't let that define you.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, if anything, out of like anything in life, was the fact that like you have the control. And as soon as I see a lot of people get stuck in the victim state, and I think it just like, they almost justify it because it's easier to just sit there and not do anything about it. And it's easier to sit in like the victim mode and think, oh, everything's happening to me. Like I can't control my circumstance, because it's easier than having the actual effort of like stepping forth and being like, this is what I want, and actually doing something for it. And like something I stand for now is just like my big, I got it tattooed, let it be good, because for the longest time I was like, didn't matter if I ran away from home and all of a sudden my circumstances were better, but I was like thinking all the time, oh, something has to happen, like it has to be bad, because it like the sick twisted way of it being like it just I didn't have to put an effort then. Like someone then had to come and save me, like it wasn't my fault.
We take comfort in that.
Then you don't have to take accountability. But it's like, well, what if it can be good and you have the control in that? Then what?
And that's the thing that most people don't actually realize. And
sadly.
Yeah. And I want to dive into that post. Like, what were you going on as a kid when you were like, I mean, not a kid, like a teenager at 16? What was your home life like that made you switch and just leave? Like, that's scary. And being so young, I was scared to leave the house at 18, and let alone 16. Shit.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing, is it was never like an easy thing by any means. A lot of the time, like growing up, I mean, I guess we'll get into it.
No, take us to like the start, I feel.
So growing up, my parents were never together, and I immediately was like pretty much rehomed with my dad with this woman that he was seeing, who became my stepmom. But my my biological mother, I lived with her for a couple of years until there was like this huge custody battle. She was like an addict at the time, so obviously I couldn't stay with her. And I remember being taken away from her by like 2 drug dealers breaking into our house and like screaming at her. We were about to play Light Bright, if you guys remember what that was.
God.
Like just throwing things across
How old
the
are
room.
you at this time?
Went through this in therapy, so I'm trying to remember.
No, you're
I think
fine.
it was like 5, like I was young.
Like really young.
I was young. I was old enough to know my dad's phone number, but too
Got
young
it.
to understand what was going on.
Got it. Okay.
And so I remember like that happening, and immediately it was like, no, you're going to live with your dad. And so I think for me, I was like, oh, this is going to be like the greatest thing. Like I get to just like be with my dad. Like I still didn't understand at that point, but then being rehomed with like my stepmom and 2 stepsisters, which everyone was like, oh, you're so lucky you get like, and kind of like you get reborn, like you're into this new family. But it didn't really go that way. And it was always like a constant battle with me and my stepmom, where it was like, you could tell I was the odd one out. So it was like constantly like, there was days where if I did something bad, because they always looked for something, it was like Chelsea was getting a flip-flop across the face sent to her room, and my sisters were going out for ice cream.
Yeah. And how did that affect your relationship with those sisters?
I mean, we don't talk anymore.
Okay.
I'm trying to rebuild
figure,
it now that I'm a little bit more mature and I can understand a bit more, but it was always kind of like, if you guys know Cinderella, it was like pretty much modern day.
That's literally what I pictured.
That's why that sound at the very beginning is so fitting. Oh my God, wow.
You knew.
They were treating you like you were the stepsister, because like if you think about it in a way, maybe your stepmom was like threatened by you in some sort of way. Well, because
what I
like
think.
you were the product of his ex-wife.
Yeah.
And you
they
were living
never even married, so it was just like the other woman.
Yeah, the other woman. So
Yeah.
maybe she saw her and you, or wow. Yeah. Cinderella moment.
Yeah. It took me just like getting so sick of the treatment, because I think for a long time as a kid you internalize that and you're like, oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. And eventually it's like, it's funny when you're out of the haze, because everyone looks at their parents and they think this is what I'm supposed to be. But then it slowly started to click for me, and I was like, wait a minute. My parents don't represent anything of what I want to be. So what does this mean for me now?
Yeah.
And starting to make my own decisions and being able to look at them and be like, what the like, hell no.
Did you have these conversations like with yourself at 16? Or because you can easily, like we're talking about the victim mindset, you can easily fall into the pattern of, oh, I'm the poor me, like I'm the stepchild, this and that. Did you have these conversations and know this, like, I don't want to be this, or
did it take until being now like so far removed to realize it?
I was going through it thinking that, because I could tell just from what they were doing, the outcome of what was coming out of it. So even like, you know, them doing cocaine, like I've never touched cocaine in my life, and like I refuse to, because of these circumstances that I've seen them go through. So it's kind of like you go through what you grow through what you go through.
Yeah.
That's like
I feel like
always
some
say.
people see that I guess like those traits in their parents and they end up replicating it, or you do the complete opposite and you're like, I never want to be anything like that. Yeah.
I think it's because I saw my sisters kind of replicating it, and then I was like, wait.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And you're living proof that you have choice. We always have choice, and you can be the victim of your circumstances, or you can be the victor and, you know, grow past it. And that's what you've done today. So when was the moment that you moved out?
I was, for the story was, I was like kind of seeing this guy. I had been seeing him for like 2 years. They were very controlling in terms of like my phone and everything. And it got to a point where they were like, they knew that we were talking. They're like, we're grounding you, took all my stuff. And we're like, we're going to make you quit your job. Like
was he the prince?
Hell no.
Frogs.
Like, there's a lot of frogs.
Literally.
But it just got to kind of a breaking point where I was like, I can't be under control in a sense where it's like it's not helping me. If it was controlling in a parental sense where it made sense, sure, I'll do it. But it kind of got to the point where I was like, it's not even right. And I remember going down to my dad and screaming at him and being like, I'm gone. Like, this is it. And I remember I packed 2 bags, called a taxi, and just left. And I was like, I didn't even think about it in my 16-year-old brain of being like, what do I bring when you run away from home? Like, and it was funny too, because like this is something that I had thought about a lot growing up. Like I remember making lists, like what am I going to bring when I leave? What am I going to bring when I leave? Wow. So it was like, it was a thought that like was reoccurring, but I think in my head I was like, but I'll never do it. And so I think that's where I got so keen to like breaking comfort zones and like getting to the point.
I think it's the base of hers.
No, there's like a humming.
Yeah, I think it's from the base of her mic.
No.
It's external?
It's over there. Oh, it's done.
Oh,
They were,
okay.
like printing something.
Okay.
I was like,
No, I was losing it too.
Where's the mouse?
We're so used to it being like so silent.
Dead
So I
silent.
was like, it's not my mic, it's not Julia's.
You're like, not the
Sorry.
equipment.
I also
Everything's
like
good.
don't want to
okay.
interrupt you at all.
No, it's
We'll
okay.
have Ian cut this out.
Yeah.
So you can just continue where you were.
You're like, what were we talking about?
You can backtrack a little bit. You can just talk about how you were like preparing what you were gonna have
Yeah.
when you were leaving.
You just never thought you would do it.
yeah.
I honestly think that that's the craziest part is I even remember talking to my sisters and like we used to talk about it together,
Wow.
being like, what are we going to do? I remember they even like one day they tried.
Oh, so they were
It
gonna
won't- but then
leave
they came
with
back.
you. So were they also being like mistreated, or was it more so? Was it? I'm like fully new to your story.
That's good.
Were you experiencing like more so neglect from parents, or was it like abuse, or
It was
a mix?
a little bit of a mix, honestly. I wouldn't say like a lot of it was like physical. There was like some instances, but a lot of it was just like my dad was always drunk in like the other room. He was never really present. And then my stepmother at the time, she was just like controlling, manipulative, like narcissist. Like I have never met someone who treated somebody else the way that she treated us.
Wow.
And so it was like, that was the reason why I was like kept the tab of every empty Smarties box. Cause I was like, every incident that happened, I was like closer and closer to being like, I'm gone. So then eventually when I hit that point, I was like, this is it. I'm just doing it.
When
it was
was
like,
that moment?
it was like, it just snapped for me when they were like, they took all my control and I felt, I think they backed me into a corner. And for me, I was like, I don't have any other choice.
Yeah. So when you did leave, like, what did you have a plan? What did that plan look like, or were you just like, as long as I'm not in this house?
I had zero clue. I think that was it though, because like something that I'm very fond on now that I didn't know then was like the expression of like burning burn the boats. Like if you get to an island on a boat and you want the opportunity to thrive on that island, you have to fucking burn the boats. Like you can't stick
That's a good analogy.
with that. But I always say that to my friends. I'm like, burn the boats. And that's what I did. I gave myself no other option to turn back. But I remember going to my aunt's house and she's like, dude, you can't stay there.
Yeah.
Your parents are going to come and find you. And so
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I didn't think this far. Okay, like, what are we going to do next? And like, gratefully, I had like a really good support system of friends around me at the time. So they're like, come to me.
That's so awesome. So you had friends that took you in during that time?
Yeah.
Did you ever go back home? That was the last time.
And
That
were
was-
you still
wow.
like going to high school at this time?
Yeah, I was like, didn't even have my license. I didn't think about it at
Wow.
all. I was
Wow.
like, yeah, I would kind of couch surf for a bit until I ended up living with like my boyfriend at the time. And that was kind of where I stuck.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you're about 16 at this point.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which
wow.
is so young to, I mean, the fact that you had to deal with it from the age of like almost around 5 to 16 is already insane that you like had to be there, but then to then leave that situation, now you're faced with all these new problems,
You're like,
I'm
wait,
sure.
I have to be an adult all of a
Yeah,
sudden?
You're
and
like,
very
what's
that's
quickly?
so young. That's so young to like have to go through that. Was your boyfriend also your age, or was he older?
He was older.
Okay.
Like dropped out of high school, the typical
Yeah,
I
get it.
skateboarder.
I get
Yeah.
Drop out older. That's
I love
hot.
bad boys.
And now it's like, are you self-aware? That's sexy.
When was your last therapy session?
Right.
Literally.
Okay, so now we're at 16, couch surfing. Did you graduate high school, and then did you have plans on going to
Also-
like college and school? Like, what happened after that?
Quick side note, because I'm curious. Did your sisters also run away, or they stayed?
Some of them, I'm pretty sure they're still living with my parents.
Okay.
Like I'm pretty sure one of them just got her license last year.
Wow.
And so it's cool to see like the contrast between the two situations of like everyone looks at me like I did the wrong thing and I'm like,
It's like, who's thriving?
right? I'm
You?
like,
Okay.
Is this a coincidence?
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah,
You can answer Julia's question now.
Yeah.
I love it. So I did end up graduating. I think the hardest part was like I was a full-time theater kid. So I was like doing theater, like doing all my theater stuff full-time, had my full-time job pretty much, was bouncing around high school. So I was like back and forth. And I think that was like when I learned like how to hustle. And like I think that's honestly like how I got to like where I am now. Cause like I wouldn't be anywhere close if I didn't have the work ethic now. But I just learned, I was like, you get put in that survival mode, and like when your back's up against the wall, you're like, I don't have any other choice. Realistically, I could have just been like, poor, like I'm the victim, but I was like, okay, like it's time to fight back. So
Yeah.
I did end up graduating. I actually got like a standing ovation. I had like such good support
gosh.
system.
Wow.
Yeah. my drama teacher went up and she's like, this young girl, she's been like living on her own. She's been like supporting herself, getting like through school, like decent grades. Don't know how I pulled that, but we got decent grades last year. And she was like crying, giving me my speech. And it's funny because I was in the back and I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to go up. Like, I'm not going to get this has been a rough year. And it just like blew me away. And I think that was really like, that was a really big moment for me, because I was like, there was times where I never thought I'd be able to graduate. And like, because of my story, but not only that, but because of like how much like mental health issues I went through, there was so many times where I was like, I'm just going to fucking end it. So to make it to that point where they were like, you're graduating and like everyone sees you for what you've been through.
Also, it's almost like finally insane. An adult figure is showing you the recognition you have been deserving this whole time. That's crazy. It blew me away. That was like the moment where I was like, I made it. And then I was like, wait, now you're an adult.
Yeah, it's like, okay, now there's more things. So you graduated high school and you basically became an adult faster than I've seen anybody else. And it was also because you had a really good support system, like teachers and friends and people that were there to like lift you up, which is so
I'm so glad you had that.
Crazy and incredible that these people were to do that. And then what was your plan after that? Like, I'm kind of curious,
college?
Like, okay, how did you go from this to now you're like a fitness coach? Like
wait, what?
Yeah.
It's funny too, because
wasn't this in Canada also? Like,
it's like a whole other factor.
I'm just like the little gypsy is what we call me.
Fill in the gaps, man. Fill them in.
What is going on? So what I went to school for didn't even like count. Like I went to school like 2 different times for 2 different things. At first I was like, I'm going to be a social worker and help kids like me. And I was like, I was so triggered back then. I was like, don't even like talk to me about it. Like I couldn't even work through it. So I was like, Kate, not that. Went back to school. I was like, I'm going to be a dermatologist. I love popping pimples. I was like, this is what I want to do.
That's been my backup plan, not gonna lie. I love dermatology.
How fun with it. And then you just do it yourself.
Yeah.
But anyways, didn't work out. And so I was like, I didn't really get it. And honestly, being a fitness coach was never even a thought to me until I was like, I started getting in the gym. I didn't even originally go to the gym. My friend was like, hey, come with me. And I was like, I hated going.
Wow.
And I think,
did you do sports growing up at all?
I did basketball once. And after every single basketball tryout, I cried. So we were not an athlete. I was like full on theater kid. Like you see me in like Romeo and Juliet. That's where you find me.
Wow. Definitely not at the gym. I'm at the theater.
So like your friends just started dragging you. Was this like during, after college, or?
It was shortly after, I want to say like 3 years kind of post out, like trying to find myself.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of it, it was like me going to the bars. Like that was like kind of where I ended up, because it was like, that's what everyone does after high school. So you get with this crowd, and I was serving at the time. So anybody in the service industry is like, let's have an entire jug of sangria to ourselves after, every shift. And, and it just got like old, and you feel like shit every time. So I think it kind of pushed me to be like, I want to go to the gym. But as everyone knows, when you start going, you're like, I hate my life. I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone's staring at me.
Yeah.
And you just don't have that confidence. And eventually my friend was like, I have a program. Come with me. Follow me. And it's funny because eventually she like stopped going, and I was like, I continued to go. And it wasn't until I was like, hey, I actually want to know what I'm doing when I'm there. I'm just going to take my course just to like make sure that, I got the bases covered. Like I can't have a man come up to me and be like, you're doing deadlifts wrong because I took the course, So I was like, that was the only reason.
I know my proper form.
So I like dedicated into being like knowing what I know. Cause I was like, the thought of someone coming up to me and trying to correct me, I was like, I would
traumatizing.
Yes. Not going through that. And it wasn't until like Kirsten Mark, like I knew her through her brother. So like we were kind of like in the same circle, and he was like, give her a chance. And she's like, I'm not going to hire this girl. She refused. She was like, okay, I'll get on an interview. Didn't even plan on hiring me. And then on the spot, she was like, I just like here, like I see you, like there's no way that I can't not hire you. And then I kind of started with her. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Is this online coaching?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So
that's freaking crazy. So
I'm here.
Kristen Mark and Brian Mark, right?
Yeah.
They're husband and wife.
Yes.
They're husband and wife. He owns PT Domination, which is like they coach fitness coaches. And she does the women's training, right? With like
the women who win.
The women who win. And now you're a coach like under her, and you help her with all those girls.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long have you been doing that for?
probably like a year and a half. It's so cool to me to see something come so full circle, because exactly like a year ago I was quitting the bank. And I worked like full time at a bank.
Wow.
Like coming out of like
So
my
you, like,
service industry.
made the jump a year ago into fitness,
and
like
she
full time.
It's funny too, because she looked at me and she's like, "Do you trust me?" And I was like, I'm going to say yes, because if I don't, you're going to be like, "You're fired." So I was like, yes, for sure. She was like, "You're quitting the bank tomorrow." I was like, you're on crack. But I did it. And I think it's like every time I've broken a comfort zone, like leaving home, doing the things that I've done, leaving the bank, it just has been so rewarding. So to bring you to like why I even came to like Houston was I was just like, I was in the same town with the same people, like getting like people like recognize me when I went to the grocery store. Oh my God, I go to like, I listen to your podcast. And I think it's such a like interesting thing, because I like having impact and getting across to people. But I was like, this is how you know you're in too small of a town.
Yeah.
And every successful person, you see them and they're like, leave your hometown, travel, and break your fucking comfort zones. And so the very first thing that I thought of, I was like, okay, I have to do it. But I didn't know where until we came down here for summer shredding. And I was like, it's just like the energy, like so many like things are happening here. And also nobody knows who I am.
Yeah.
So
which is nice.
I packed my car and I just like gave my notice like a month before. And I was like, I'm shitting my pants. But I was like, I need to do it. So I just drove here. And
do you think that, because from 16, you, similar situation, like you packed up and you just left. Do you think that made it easier for you to literally move from Canada to
the
Texas?
South? Like not even like Canada to New York, maybe, but to Texas?
I'd be traumatized moving to freaking Dallas.
Yeah, that's why people are like, every time I do things, I love seeing like people look at me and be like, I cannot believe you did that. Like, I think it's because so much of me when I was like first moving out, and like even like when I left my first boyfriend, like he was like cheating on me, doing coke and stuff, and there came to a point, same thing, I was like, pack my stuff, I was like, I'm done. So it's like to be able to like have to break those comfort zones purely out of survival, and then to get to a point where it's like, it's my choice.
Yeah,
I get to
like
do
you
it
get
for
to
fun.
choose to do this now.
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
now that you live in Houston, like how do you feel making that jump and coming here? Do you feel like you made the right choice?
Always. I feel like any time that you like leave your comfort zone, it's like growth. I'm like,
I love drastic change, I will say. I love just like uprooting everything I do and everyone I know.
And the only reason I came here too is because like it scared the shit out of me. And I was like, if you're continuously doing those things, like it could end horribly, quote unquote, in the moment, but you're always going to look back and be like, this is what I got from it.
Yeah.
And if I stay stagnant, like I'll actually probably go crazy. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then once you get bored of Houston, then you're gonna just like boop boop boop. But I'm gonna move to fucking UK. I don't know.
The little
It's
gypsy.
Like, the little gypsy just on the road. There's so many nuggets of like wisdom and things in your story that have brought you to be the person that you are, because really our past shapes who
everything.
we are.
Yeah.
And it could be for the better, it also could be from the worst. We've seen both sides for sure, especially like within your family. So the one thing that I want to kind of go back to is more so digging into like what happened to you in your childhood. So like, what were you feeling in that moment when you were with your sisters? Like, was there any sort of like abandonment feeling that you felt, like you were just like, plop, here you go? Like, I want to know what was going on in your head during these moments.
100%.
Like when you're ripping the Smarties box off, when you're writing a list of like a go bag, basically.
Yeah.
What is going on in your head?
What is poor child?
Well, I'm like, I want to pick you up and take you somewhere.
And I think this is like where it comes to like in terms of the victim mindset and stuff, because I remember there was like a good like 1 or 2 years where I was like, I got so consumed by like my mental issues with like depression, anxiety, like having an eating disorder, and I got such a kick out of it. And I remember enjoying that feeling because I was like, I had control and I could like sit in this and like I deserve to be here because they put me there, and like literally just living in the victim state. And I remember just like over and over like enjoying it. And like even like thinking back now, I'm like, in the weirdest way, I liked being there because then I didn't have to do anything else. It was a good excuse for me to not have to do anything else. So I think slowly starting to be like hitting that rock bottom and being like, okay, wait a minute, like this actually isn't fun. Like your friends are noticing it. Like your sister's now going into the bathroom and making herself puke after every dinner. Your friends now at lunch aren't eating either because they're seeing what you're doing, and like really realizing that like what you do has an impact. And this was before I was even like, I'm here to inspire girls. I was like doing it the opposite way. And I was like, okay, so like there has to be a different way. And I remember just like there was so many times like sitting there, and it was like honestly like through art, like through creating in like theater and like going to like art and really sitting with my feelings as much as I did, I don't think that I would have like come out being like stronger and wanting to inspire. But there was always this part of me that like wanted to be better and to do better. And it really came from like being in my peers, like obviously going through high school, there's always people that are like judging you and like bullying you and everything. So it was like I always just wanted to like slowly started to become like that better version of myself where I'm like, hey guys, like we're not going to gossip today. Like let's do one day no gossiping. Like this is going to be our challenge, because I just remember like sitting in my room so many times, just like I hated myself, I hated my life, I hated everything around me. And I literally remember being like, there's like literally no point. I was like, why am I here? Like what is, so I leave home and then what? I'm still stuck with myself. And so it was like, it was honestly like, it was painful, like being in those situations. But I honestly think that like pain is your power. And that's something that I'm like so strong on, because it's like, if you're making it through every single painful situation, like you've made it through 100% of your bad days.
It's all the more proof of what you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
And I think people see it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like that there's shame around pain, that we shouldn't have to feel it or be in it. And in a weird way, you kind of, for a while there, it seems like you found comfort in that pain.
I think
like
a lot of us
with,
do.
Yeah, like even with the like eating disorder, and then with the family stuff going on, even though that was shitty stuff, man. There
heavy.
was like,
She's
that's
heavy.
heavy, bro. Like there was some sort of comfort in that, because that's what was normal, even if it's not beneficial for you. But then you made choice. And you saw that, oh, there's another side to this.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you're so used to being around people that like are constantly hitting self-destruct, you're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like this is it. And then I was like, this doesn't feel good. And
is anyone else struggling?
Like, what is going on?
This is shitty, or no, just me? Okay.
And we're woo-woo. I'm sure that you are
She's
too.
very
So,
woo-woo.
so I think it was always like, I always knew that there was also like that, like I felt it. Do you know what I mean? And I honestly think that that's the biggest thing that like carried me through my days, is I'm like, there has to be more. There has to be more. Like, I feel like there is like so much more to me. And I know that this isn't how I'm going to get there. So I think it was also like kind of tapping into that like more like spiritual side. And like, I didn't understand it at that point like I do now, but like also just like always sitting with myself, like praying, like writing, like sitting with myself. And like, that's the only way that I got out. And I think that just goes to show like you literally need to feel it to heal it. Like if you're not dealing with the demons in your head, like they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you have healed after this? Because I know that you do a lot of inner work for yourself, but how have you gone from this little girl that's in her room feeling neglected, and you're being taken care of by people that don't really know you, they're just taking you in, to being this person that's like so sure of herself, moves across country, posts on Instagram, has a podcast,
and is inspiring
women? Like really, how did you grow past all of this? Because that's a lot of ick to
Did
get
you have
through.
help also, or were you really making this change on your own?
I want to say that it like a lot of it was self-made. Like I will always take the credit for that, because it'd be easy for me to be like, it was this person. But I do think like on the woo-woo side, like I have always been supported, and it was different groups between different parts of my life, but I always had like those little travelers kind of with me. But it was 100% me. And I think to get to your good times in life, what I've realized is like you have to experience the duality. If you don't give yourself the ability to see contrast, you'll never know the good. And it's something that I'm like focusing so much on. That's why I'm like, let it be good, because I understand the bad.
Yeah.
So it was like really allowing myself to feel that, allowed myself to also understand, well, if there's this, there's also this. And so seeing the contrast allowed me to like heal so much easier. And I honestly think that this is why so many people who've come from like darker or like worse pasts have like so much potential, because they have the drive, they have the why. They're like, I see this vision because I understand the opposite.
Yeah.
And when you understand the opposite, you know that there's a different, like there's that other side.
That resonates so heavy. Like it's insane, because I feel like you take life for granted if life just kind of moves by for you. But like when you're at that point where like you don't want to be alive anymore, every day after that low like breaking point is like a blessing of like, holy shit, I made it. Like, I'm still alive, and now I'm so appreciative of life.
Yeah.
And until you have those breaking moments, not everyone has them. Like, please, I would love if no one has any suicidal ideation or anything, but a lot of us do. And I feel like those breaking points are like kind of a reference of like, look how far I've come since then. So like everything since that running away, it's like, look what you've built from there.
It's the biggest blessing. And like you said, like, I think that's what it comes down to with like the growth mindset is like, there's no part of me. And obviously through my healing, there was a lot of resentment, like a lot. And I used to like look at my parents and I'm like, I don't even want to talk to them. But it's gotten to the point now where I can realize what I've come from. And I have so much deep appreciation because for all the bad, you have to appreciate the good. And this is something that like, if you guys know Tony Robbins, like he like drilled into me. And I remember watching his Netflix special and I started crying because he's like, if you are going to blame them for everything, then blame them for everything. Wow. You can't just blame them for the bad.
Wow.
It's the good too.
I've never heard that.
I keep getting chills. Just as you're talking.
Wait.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Chelsea accepting this award for greatest influence ever. That's amazing. And this is just a true testament of literally turning pain into power. And that's why when you graduated high school, like, let's think about, like, I'm thinking about when I graduated high school, I was like, who gives a fuck? But that's why it mattered so much to you. And that's why your teacher was up there and she's crying and she's like, this girl, she's been through this, and this, but she's still up here and she made it. And that's why it mattered so much, because you saw the duality of pain versus power. And that to me is the coolest thing ever. Like, there's a cynical side of me is like, tell me all the shit you've been through. But we're also going to talk about the complete opposite of that, which is so cool.
And I think that's the best part of like, there's a lot of people who sit in their story and let it run their life, and they're like, I don't want to talk about it, like this is like this big dark cloud. But to me, I'm like, it is so touching to me that every single time I come out and I say, this was a piece that I went through, this was something that I went through, that it's like there's more connection. And like the only thing that people want more than anything else is connection. So to like be fully vulnerable and share that, like I think that's been a big part of my healing process. And like my parents hate when I share my story on social media, but I'm like, you don't understand like how therapeutic it is, not only for me but for so everybody else reading it.
And
because
I bet
they're
that's
like, I'm not alone.
That because you said at a time there was some resentment, there was this, there was that, and when you start digging through past trauma, everyone has trauma, little or big, it doesn't matter.
Everybody.
But I bet that there was a lot of release for that. Maybe you stopped feeling X, Y, and Z about your parents, because regardless of what happens with how we grow up, our parents are doing the best that they can with the knowledge they have.
This is what it came to, was I was like, they were doing their best. Was it what I would have done? Probably not. But it was like, they didn't know any better. The same way that when I go through mistakes, I don't know any better. And that's the point of them. So I think the biggest, like, most healing thing that I did wasn't to revisit the things that they did. It was the ideas that they like put in me. So the self-limiting beliefs, and working through those. Because my parents weren't the problem. It was the ideas that I got from it. I wasn't worthy enough. I wasn't lovable. I wasn't this. And so when you start to like get to the root, it had less to do with what they did and more to do with how it made me feel. And when I could attack that head on, instead of just like living in my story and was like, well, this is like, you know, belief is everything. Like if you change your belief on yourself, you're a fucking entire different person. Like nobody gets to tell you what you believe about yourself besides you. So to be able to get to that point and actually like change those beliefs was what got me to where I am now. And it's still a work in progress.
Well, it's not like you can't go back in time and change how you were treated, but you can now as an adult change how you look at it or view it or handle it. Have you sat down with your parents? Have you had that conversation with them of like, this is how you guys made me feel?
Or is that just a hard no?
It's been like give and take, and honestly, like my mom was like clean for a little bit, where we had a better relationship through like me leaving home and stuff, and she like recently relapsed over the last like few years. So like it's been weird coming to a point where like I almost feel like I'm the parent with my parents, because like I'm like trying to like sit them down and explain things to them, and no, this is how life is. This
and
is
as a
perspective.
kid, that like shouldn't be the circumstance.
But also, I understand why it is, because our parents grew up in a completely different generation.
They didn't have what we had.
Yeah, my parents are even older than most parents that are my age. Like I'm 25, and my mom is. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening. My mom looks oh, she's fucking
She
fabulous.
looks amazing.
Every time that I show pictures of my mom, I'm like, look how fucking beautiful my mom is. She's fire. She's 60, looks like 40. My dad is 70, looks like maybe 50. No gray hairs, but like they're older. So they're an even older generation where this stuff is not normal to talk about.
Therapy is like
not
a
okay.
big no.
Not okay. So they're trying to like unlearn that. And it's, and us, we're like, I share my binge eating on social media.
Yeah.
I'm like crying on social media. And my mom and dad are like, what? So I get why it would be hard for them.
It's almost like a cool gift now for me to be as aware as I am, though, because like although they don't understand it, when I explain it to them, more often than not, they want to know. Like there's such a big side of them that's like they don't get it, but they're like, but why? And like I actually like a lot of me like try to cut my parents out, and I had a conversation with my mentor, and she was like, do you want them in your life? And I was like, yes. Like when I look at my vision, I'm like, I want them at my wedding. I want, you know, when I have kids that they can somewhat be a part of it. Is it going to be to the extent of the fairy tale world or what others are? Probably not, but I do see them as a big part of my life, and like to have them seeing my accomplishments and, you know, going through life with what I'm doing means a lot to me. And she was like, then you need to hold space for them. Because right now I'm not even giving them the space to show up, but I'm expecting them to. So I had conversations with both of them just being like, I do love you. Like there's boundaries, but like I do want you in my life. And like just being vulnerable, like you don't have to play this game where it's like, you hurt me, I'm going to give you the silent treatment. It's like straight up like, this is how I feel. I care about you. You're important to me, but this is where my boundary lies. And when you're clear with that, it's like they can meet that expectation because they then understand where you're at. And I think this goes with every, you know, relationship, but I actually had a conversation with my dad a couple weeks ago, and he like FaceTimed me, and it was cool because I was able to like talk to him and like give him advice. Like he's at like a sticking point in his life right now that he like doesn't understand where his next move is. He's, you know, not happy with a couple of things, and like me being able to like coach him on that and give him different perspective.
It's almost full circle.
And him being able to like, wow,
and to be
I didn't know
able
that.
to receive.
Because people don't know what they don't know. So
Yeah.
when you tell them and they're like, oh,
yeah,
there's a new way of life, it's kind of refreshing. And not that I'd ever take it on for me to be like, I'm going to change my parents' life because I'm so much that kind of fixer. It's just like cool to be in that kind of position where it's like, I can offer you the free value that I have and like kind of see what you do with it.
I love that so much. And it's really cool to see that this generation is taking more of a stand in this kind of realm. And I only think that this is the beginning. I really think that 2020 was the great awakening that everybody needed. For
I
sure.
agree.
2020 was the best year of my
2020
life.
humbled all of us.
Because it was the worst year of my life. And yeah, there's a great awakening that's happening where people are literally like waking up, and children are even being born more quote unquote woke. And I'm not even lying. Like I'm so woo, like I'm woo woo in that
So
children
woo-woo.
are being born and they're more aware than. I'm getting weird, but I'm for real on this shit. But I love that, and I'm happy that you're healing through that, because it could be so easy just to cut them out of your life and say, no, that's not for me. But it takes a real badass woman to say, you know what? No, it's okay. People make mistakes, and I'm not going to blame you for X, Y, and Z. How can we heal together?
Yeah.
Which is,
and I think the biggest thing is like, it wasn't easy. So anyone listening to this being like, I'm not going to text my mom, like that's so hard, is like, I wanted to puke doing it. And honestly, when I first texted my mom, it was like paragraphs of like, you're the reason of this, blah, blah, blah. And like, I think this was more empowering, was letting her know, like she texted me a lot of nasty things. And I just was like, it's okay. I love you anyway. I know that you're hurting.
wow.
And just, I think just seeing people where they're at, because like we have all these layers up constantly that like we don't feel safe in that vulnerability. And for a really long time, I was living in my masculine, and I didn't let myself have that vulnerability because it's scary.
Yeah.
You don't know how people are going to react. And I think really learning that, you know, the only way to live is like through love, is through compassion, is through that kind of connection. So that was like what I had to learn through going through those things.
Yeah. And we talked about this, and I literally told Kendall as soon as I came back, I was like, this needs to be a topic that we talk about on her podcast, because it was just so good. Julia had 3 glasses of wine in her, which is a lot for Julia. So
She
I
don't
was
drink.
I was
No, me
like
neither.
hype on this topic.
Yeah.
So I want to really dive into this because it's so important. And I think a lot of women will, and men, like
Both. Yeah. That's
even maybe a
that's
little
the
bit
thing.
more men, is that like men can be so in their masculine, but women can be so in their masculine
and
too.
we did talk about this like on a podcast semi-recently about like our contrast in that, because I've always been very vulnerable. That's just my personality. I'm a big like, as soon as I meet
hard pass.
Oh, not like that. No, I don't like being touched, but like emotionally, I will open up to anyone and everyone, and I've always seeked comfort in also hearing other people's stories. So I'm like good at like dragging it out of people sometimes. And Julia is far more like hard and tough. And I think like since having someone like that in my life, I've become more confrontational. I do stand my ground where I'm not a pushover, but I also see her like slowly opening up.
I've literally I've seen her do that, and
I always turn to her and I'm like, are you proud of me?
Yeah,
I just stood up for myself.
Yes, we literally
ordered
talked
for
about
myself.
It. Yes, and but the thing is that I've been that way with my sister too, because my sister is very, she's just like, she's delicate and she's a little bit quieter. And like, I was always the older sister. Like I would speak for her. I would order for her because I knew that she was scared and uncomfortable, and I wanted to be like that person that was there for her. So like there's some part of me that wants to do that for Kendall in a way. That's like sees her as like a little sister, and I'm like, don't fuck with her. I can call her that, but you can't. You know, it's like,
I can talk shit.
Tiny you go.
I'm like 5'2".
Yeah.
Like,
watch me.
Watch me do my man thing.
How did you have someone help you find your more like feminine energy side, or did you find it within yourself?
Do tell, because I'm still needing that.
Honestly, my coach, Azaria Glame, AZ Fitness on Instagram,
Shout
has
out.
been like, shout out. I stopped going to therapy because she's been like everything. Like
Wow.
even she was who coached me through Let It Be Good. Like, and texting my mom because she was like, there's an energetic block there. You want them in your life, but you're not letting them. Because if you're looking at everything is energy. So you're looking and like, if something's blocking that energy, like, how do you expect anything to move?
It
So
won't flow.
she's kind of been like the biggest, she's like changed my life like single-handedly, but it was a lot of like, I came into like the entrepreneurial space after like hustling my whole life because that's what I thought I had to do. Because even when I was working at the bank, I was working 7:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. because that's just like what I always thought I had to do. And I'm still working through this mindset now because I'm like, is that me distracting myself? Is that because that's where I get my validation from? Is that, you know, like trying to figure that out? But
that's the masculine. The masculine is overworking and
controlling,
and I can do this. Like even if I'm working from blah blah blah, the grind. That's the masculine. But you're right; it's a mask for the feminine, which is what's going on underneath.
Yeah,
It's almost like being painfully independent of like, I don't need help. I'm going to do this by myself. And it's like, you know, getting help sometimes pretty nice.
You want your life to be a little easier? Ask for some help.
they say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm still that child.
Yes.
So
Dude, we all are.
I think
inner
it was
child.
it came to that, but it was also like it was funny because the realization came to me because she's like put me on this energetic, like more on my woo woo, and I was looking through my content and I was like, man, I am so deep in my masculine, it's not even funny, because I started my platform wanting to be vulnerable and sharing my story. That was why I even like started posting on Instagram.
Then what changed? Why did you go into your masculine? What happened?
I think as I went through this growth journey, I was losing a lot of people in my life. So like my closest best friends,
It's like a fuck you mentality.
like a
the
protection.
villain era
Yeah.
that is so popular these days. And I was like,
That's me.
I hate.
Interesting.
And I always found myself wanting to get into that, being like the fuck you mentality, like I'm the villain era, like no one can touch me. But I was like, it felt wrong.
It's also
Yeah.
very
It
lonely.
hurt. Well, and it's because you're like energetically, like you're not allowing yourself to go into that different state. And so I brought it up to one of her calls because we have calls every single week. And I was like, I came to this realization. She's like, what's that? I was like, I was looking through my content. It was like, get your ass out of bed, kind of like motivation. Like,
Yeah.
I ain't CT.
Right?
I'm Chelsea.
It's
like,
still your
love
motherfucking set.
yeah, I'm like, I'm the self-love, like, oh, give yourself great. Like, that's who I have that part of me that's like, I have that grind. Like, that's why we're bodybuilders. But
Yeah.
I was looking through and I was like, who is she? And it came to the point where I was like, I haven't worn makeup in weeks. I haven't done my hair. Like, I haven't gotten dressed. And it's not the physical thing, but it's just like the embodiment of the energetic standpoint that I was living in. And she was like, I've been waiting for you to bring this up.
Oh.
And I was like, oh shit, called out, because I was working like 14-hour days. And when you're in the entrepreneurial space, like so easy to do that. I'm like, one more lead, one more message, one more this, one more that. Like there's always more to do.
We never stop working.
No.
Never.
And if you give yourself 14 hours to work, you're going to work 14 hours. And I think for someone who's hiding so much from like the hurt and stuff that she's gone through, and I think that's one thing I'm still working through, is like the grief of losing an old life is like, what's the best way to do it? Well, I'm just going to, you know, bury my head and like they can watch me be successful.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started to like draw back into my feminine and like go for walks, be in flow, like don't have a plan every single day, and like tap into that like sense of myself. I was like, oh my God, she's back. And I remember I posted something that was like, that's my poetic state. That's when I can write. That's when I'm creative and in my flow. And I was like, I feel
It's
so
like
much
that's
better
where
being
you were
here.
meant to be, and it's almost like you just lost that for a little bit, and then like coming back, I'm sure it just felt natural.
And there's definitely a balance of the two. But I feel like all of us hit points where we're too much in one. If we go too far in our feminine, we don't get anything done because we're crying, eating
Yo,
chips.
that's me like most of the time.
And we're literally questioning every word that comes out of our mouth. We go too in the masculine, and we're like, I don't give a fuck when you
too many
and you have no
walls.
friends. And it's like, okay, I for so long have teetered. Like I'll teeter between two, but I'm always teetering more towards the masculine. And then the duality and like what I do is I am a bodybuilder, which is very masculine, but all my content is very vulnerable and mindset based. So I'm like, okay, like where can we be in the middle? But the femininity has so much power in it because that is what connects you.
Oh my God. It's
to everybody.
That's what changes
why we're
people's
here
lives.
right now. The feminine is what brought us together. If I was in my masculine, I would have never talked to you because I would have been like, nah, bro, like
everyone's out to get me.
if I was too in my and I'm not doing this to make fun of men. This is legit how I act a lot of times in my brain.
Well, and they need to tap into it too. Like, and I think honestly, I realized this too through my own coaching, because you can't coach people through like pure masculine energy, because what are you gonna say? What, you missed your workout? Well, you better do better. No, you're gonna have to be like, hey, well, like let's tap into this here. Like,
And people
how are
don't
you feeling?
respond to it. No. Not all people. She doesn't respond well to that. You tell me, oh, you're fucking up and someone's going to beat you. I'm like, really, motherfucker?
The way I would just lay down and cry if someone talked to me like that. I'm a very like, you're doing great, sweetie. I'm like, I am. Okay, I'm going to go work a lot harder.
Yeah. So opposite.
I mean, I definitely still have both. I think my thing is I'm very like hard internally. I'm very soft to everyone else. I like positive feedback. I like giving positive feedback. Inside, when I'm training legs, I'm like, you fucking pussy. Like, I do it to myself. So then when someone else says it, I'm like, wait, it's only okay if I do it.
I'm only allowed to bully myself.
Yeah,
Hold on
literally.
here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we all have it within us. It's more so what we express outwardly and also how we talk to ourselves. Because like I can sometimes be very feminine outwardly, but like very masculine in myself, and I realize I'm often being too hard on myself. And yeah, so it goes past just like how we respond to others.
I love that you mentioned that, because that was like a breakthrough I had literally last week, because I was like, I'm so good at being like in my feminine if I'm like around people and being that nurturing, like vulnerable person. But it's like when you're with yourself and like you're going through stuff, like I think it's like important to realize like when like it's easy to do things when it's easy, but like when it's hard, how are you showing up?
Yeah.
And so like being able to treat myself with more of the feminine energy when like I'm going through something hard, and I can go, girl, like it's okay. Like you did great today. Like you're doing your best. Like let's maybe tap into like maybe why you're feeling a little bit, but like anyways, just like speaking to yourself in a more feminine state. It's like, oh, like when you're in that energy, like it counts more to have that towards yourself. And you know, how you treat yourself is a reflection of how you can do it to others. Because when it's like I'm coaching my clients and I'm telling them things, why am I not giving myself the same
you
advice?
almost feel like a hypocrite. Or it's like, oh, I'm telling this person that like, hey, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to like rest. But for me, no.
It's
for me,
okay.
I can't take rest. I can't.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's been the biggest thing that's inspired me, was like my clients have helped me change my life, because like even yesterday I was like going through it. I was like, went to a coffee shop and I just drove home, cried to country. And I was like on a meeting this morning, I was like, straight up, you guys, I couldn't answer you guys yesterday because after your check-ins, I was tapped out. So I cried home to country, put on a bath and watched my favorite movie. And they were like, this is why we love you so much. It's because you're vulnerable and you're real. And like when I show them that I do it, they think they're allowed to do it too.
It gives them permission.
You're setting the standard that they're like, oh, like she's paving the way. Like this is how you're allowed to, you know, act for yourself. So that's like the biggest thing I think about. Like, although yes, I'm doing it for me, it's also like, it's so cool to think about like the people that are watching me. Like if there was a camera on me 24/7, like what standard would I be setting for the people I love?
That's true. Literally, I forgot who said that. I don't know. There's probably been a million people that said that, but like living your life with a camera on you all the time. I want you guys to listen to this right now. Imagine there's a camera on you at all times. Would you be proud, and would your family be proud of that video getting played back?
And if not, why? And if not,
think about that.
change
Specifically in the hard times. I don't care about your good days. Who are you in the worst days?
Because that really shows your character. That's me deep in prep, and I'm like, I hate everything and everyone.
I always say to people too, because like there was this like whole phenomenon, like growing up, everyone's like, be kind to each other, and it was always the girls like talking shit, and I was like, you are not kind until you are kind to the meanest person to you. Because like the biggest thing I stand for now is I'm like, nothing changes my character. Nothing changes who I am, like no environment. I'm still going to do my morning routine. I don't care where I am. I'm still going to show up and be like compassionate and loving and respectful. I don't care how mean you are to me, because that's who I am. That doesn't change based on circumstance.
I don't change my beliefs, my values, who I am because of other people and how they act.
Yeah, be as mean as you want to me. I'm still going to be like, girl, it's okay. Like
that's how I am.
Like I don't think it means that you have to like not like someone or like love them, but it's also like understanding where they're at, that I'm just like,
I mean, you had to find that within your own parents, like let alone, I feel like then any relationship after that, like I'm sure it's easier, because like no mistreatment will be on that level.
Never.
You know?
And I think you just realize that it's never about you.
Yeah.
Like the way people treat you is never about you.
We often blame ourselves when in reality we talk about it all the time. It's just a reflection of them.
Yeah. And I think it took me going through a lot of circumstances where I was like, wait, hold up.
Yeah.
I'm not the problem.
No.
Am I the drama?
Am I the villain here? And I honestly have like had some falling out with friends that I think back to now, and I'm like, instead of like getting mad back at them, was just like, I should have looked at them and been like, where are you at? Like, what's going on? Like, talk to me. Like, how are you feeling? Because like no one ever lashes out at you over something that like realistically something that you did is something internal that they're like you triggered me. So it's like, let's talk through this. And it's cool to be in like a high level circle now, because I have friends that like will be like, you really triggered me and it really made me resent you because of X, Y, and Z. And we can sit down and talk about it. I'm like, that's interesting.
It's
and she's
cool
like,
to have those conversations.
She's always glad, because she's like, it brings me to reflection for myself, because it's never about, you know, the other person.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if you're judging someone else, most likely you're judging yourself. So like, just think about it. If you're judging, maybe it's someone on social media or not, or how someone parents, or your brother, your friend's choices, there's something that you're judging yourself about as well. Most of the time it's very mirrored.
It always is.
And for me, I see this a lot with social media lately. For me, I don't think I'm like judging the people. I'm more like comparing myself to other people.
It's hard not
and
to.
doing that kind of thing. And then immediately I flip back and go, okay, Julia, if you're getting upset at X, Y, and Z, what's going on with you?
What's poppin'? It's funny too, because when I have the worst like body dysmorphia, or I'm like comparing myself more to others, or like that kind of thing, it's when I'm not showing up for myself. It's like when you get that imposter
100%.
when you get that imposter syndrome and you're like, oh, maybe I don't deserve this, or maybe I don't deserve it. It's like, it's because you're slacking and you know it.
Yeah.
Yes. That was
Don't try and blame it on anyone else.
Yeah.
It's been literally me lately. I was like, I'm doing this 1 week challenge with the girls in my binge eating support group, where it's 5 things that you have to do a day, because I was slacking on doing like my morning routine things. And then I was getting upset and angry about things that normally I wouldn't be. And it was because I wasn't showing up to my greatness and the things that I know make me happy and set me up for success. So I was like, I'm the type of person that like, okay, accountability time. I'm putting this in my big group of girls and you're all going to catch me on my shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you're getting mad because you're not actually doing the thing. There's something that's going on with you. And now I'm better. I'm doing those things.
Right. And it's like when you're on your shit, you're like, you feel great. You're not really like, maybe there's a little bit of that comparison where you're like, I need to be better. But it's like, you're like, I'm the best. I'm the GOAT. Yeah. Because it's like you're being accountable.
It's easy to hype yourself up when you're like doing stuff you're proud about too. Like back to that camera thing. If you're like not super proud of your actions or happy in your circumstances, like, yeah, you're going to start resenting everyone around you because you're like, well, their show is better. But like, what they're doing is better. And it's like, if
Their
you
movie.
instead of trying to then drag them down, if you just focused on yourself and getting your morals or circumstances or whatever in check, then like nothing and nobody else matters at the end of the day.
It's very true. You just kind of get into that flow state
of
being you, doing your thing, putting your head
feels
down.
so good too.
And not letting anybody come fuck with your energy.
Life is exhausting when you're like looking and paying attention and like talking shit all on other people. Like if you just focus on you, life is like so chill.
Well, when you notice that, it's like it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like I posted such a vulnerable post the other day just about like my acne, and I was like, this makes me want to vomit posting it. But I was like, the only reason I did it is because I was like, people can judge me 100%. They probably already do. Let's be honest.
But you're gonna do it anyways.
I was like, what? I'm gonna post it on this app that doesn't even exist. In 5 years, no one will remember on the speck of dust that we're walking on.
Literally.
Nothing matters.
Yeah, we were.
Nothing.
So it's like when people say anything like rude to me, like, or like there's any kind of like judgment towards me, I'm just like, eh. But also I think it's this is like, obviously I'm sure we all get it. Like you guys probably on a grander scheme of the judgment, especially like me leaving my hometown was like so many people were like the stuff I was posting. Like I had one of my closest friends walked in on him like talking crap about me.
Oh God.
And I was like,
where are they?
Whoa. Don't worry,
we'll
he sent me flowers and apologized, and I was like, okay, bye. Wow. So, yeah, it was good. He got caught in his shit, but I was like, you look at it and you're like, I would never trade my life for anything that you have. Why would what you have to say even matter?
Yeah.
Because you notice that the criticism you get are from, like, poor, unhappy, like, fat people. No offense. But, like, no one great has ever criticized me, and when I look at the people that are great, that recognize me and see me, they're only ever saying good things, so what does that really say?
Yeah. It's just a testament of their own character. One of my favorite quotes, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of like, what does it matter what someone else thinks of you? They barely know themselves. Ooh. And it's like, that's just like so beyond true. No, literally. Like, I don't know. I feel anyone judging anyone for anything else really needs to look inward.
Always. Every single time.
Definitely, because it's like, why is what I'm doing bothering you? And right now, I feel like we're living in a society more than ever where there's so much division, and when we really should just kind of be unifying together. And it's like, it's sad to see because there's so much power in unity. Like we're here right now on a podcast because we're coming together, setting differences, everything aside, and it doesn't. None of it matters. So if whatever you're doing isn't harming anybody,
suck my ninky.
Go for it, bruh.
Literally. And I think it just goes back to like how important it is to just like have that vulnerability and like that love and connection. Even when I see someone like cut me off in traffic, I'm like, maybe their mom died. Love you, bro. Hope you're having a better day.
Like really, just there's such a huge there's a perspective shift. It's like, okay, maybe they're rushing to something when I normally would be like, fuck you.
Yeah. No, she's the road rage queen. You're talking to the wrong person here. But I'm very much the person that's like, oh, they must be going somewhere more important than me right now. Like, I'm just chilling. I'm just heading to work.
When you're like in that state of life where you're like, everything's good, everything's blissful, like, you know, you have to tap into that. It's not always that every single day, but it's like so much easier to just like, hope your day's getting better. Hope you're having a better day.
I get it.
Yeah, it's like none of it fucking matters.
We're on a speck of dust.
Yeah, we're just a little speck of dust on this planet. It's crazy too, especially with like what we do and like influencers and posting things on social media and like there's eyes. None of it matters, bro.
Yeah. No. We were standing in the bathroom this morning and we looked at each other and we were like, we ain't shit. Like,
none of it matters.
Literally nothing.
It's like nothing and everything matters at the same time.
Yeah. I kind of came to that with my posts because I used to like reread them and like look at the picture and I'm like, honestly, like if I don't like it in 2 days, I can delete it. Like nothing matters.
Like it's not that, nothing's that deep, you know?
We're literally on this podcast where we're like, do this shit, motivating, but nothing matters.
Nothing matters in a good way. Nothing matters in the sense that like you should feel free. You shouldn't overthink things. You shouldn't live in the past too heavily and let it affect you and live in that victim mindset because at the end of the day, like it happened, move on. Like it doesn't matter now.
Like there's so much power that we give to not only the things that are said around you, but the things that you are saying to yourself to where that these are fact. this is reality, this is what it is. And then there's so many microscopic, meaningless things that we consume our minds with, like scrolling too much.
God.
Parents, what they think about you, what your brother said, or I don't know, this stupid little drama thing that nobody cares about. And we let it take up so much valuable space that you could be using to go after something that you fucking really want to do. Better yourself.
Yeah.
There's too much space being taken up by useless shit.
It make you happy. I think the biggest shift that I've ever heard was the fact that it was like your brain is like a supercomputer. Like you can fill it with things that drag you down, or you can use it to serve you. And when you think about like, what if I focus every single thing on the next good thought, where I'm just like in this constant continuum that like I get to live in this like delusionally optimistic state because everything's good because I can create that.
Yeah.
There's no one saying this person has to hate you. In my mind, I can be like, they love me. Like they're just saying this because of this. Like that's how I am now, where I'm like, everything's like, you just reframe everything because it's like, I get to create that.
That is so freeing.
And once you create that belief too, everything caters to that.
Yeah.
So it's like, why wouldn't I
like that.
In my mind, I'm like, everybody loves me. I'm the shit.
Yeah, right. You like literally get to the point where you turn like a mean comment.
We're all in a simulation anyway.
And you like blink and you're like, they actually said they loved me.
But it's so true though. Like you manifest. If you told me a year ago, I'd be like sitting on a couch with you guys, like in Houston, having just moved. I'd be like at the bank with my ex-boyfriend, like shitting my pants, being like, there's no way. There's no way.
Life is just wild, like
crazy.
the way that it brings you to who you are gonna be. And I know this is just the beginning for you, and there's so many things that are going to happen and shift. If your mindset's like this right now with how young you are,
you have such good energy.
let's
too.
keep it moving, guys. I hope that you guys follow her and get to know her more. We always end the podcast with the last question. And when was the moment that you knew how powerful you really were?
Ooh.
You're good.
This is where I would insert
we said we're going to get the Jeopardy sound.
We're going to get the Jeopardy sound. But in the meantime... Oh, crickets.
Ew, I hate that one. Turn it off. There you go. That's a pretty one.
Yes, because you
You're
transformed.
Cinderella.
Such a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you're good now.
I think it's because it's hot.
No, she got it.
Okay.
You've had so many good points.
And I honestly think it's just been degrees throughout my life because I've always had the inkling, but I honestly don't think it was until like me being able to share my story and people were like, this helps. I think that was honestly it. Like when I started to come on social media and like made a podcast and people like resonated with it, I was like, oh shit.
There's power in
this pain. This actually like works.
Yeah.
So I think it's just been like certain degrees. And I think every day is like more and more, I'm like, holy shit, like it's unlimited. Like every single day it unlocks more and more. And then I realize like, step into it. But I think it's like, just like, honestly, it's more so like not a moment, but it was like every time I've been vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's everything.
I love it.
I love it too.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome.
Thank you for sharing your story
Sharing
with
your
us.
story and everything. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Chelsea Tansey and my Spotify or Apple podcast, The Hustle Honeys.
The Hustle Honeys.
I like
we'll
that
also
name.
put it, like, super cute. We'll put it in the description below so that you guys can listen to more freaking incredible content.
I'm going to go listen to
if you
all
like
of your
ours,
pods.
You're most likely going to like hers. Hers are, I know, real, raw, and vulnerable. And sometimes she says she literally just like picks it up and like does it. And to me, that's just the realest thing, how you're really feeling. Not even worrying about like a script or what you're saying. Just, this is me.
You're like, I'm not even wearing pants right now, but let's get into
it. I love that.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much. And as always, guys, we love you all so much, and you are more powerful than you think.
Bye.